Hello, hello, lovely people. So today we are going to talk about value and more specifically, do you value your time? And what that creates for us and how we can build more value or start to value our time more specifically. So I want you to just pause and think about if if time was a relationship, if time was a person, what's that relationship like? Do you value time? If we think of time as a person, how are you showing up to time? How are you taking care of time? How are you interacting and engaging with time? Now, this might sound a little cuckoo. That's fine. We want to bend away from the ordinary into testing these different things because it allows us to actually solve for the root issue here and what's behind our time. So, for example, if you can even pause me because I'm going to keep speaking. If you want to really sit with the question, I recommend you do. Now is a great time to pause. Okay, if you come back and you've answered the question, do you value time? Some of you listening, probably many of you, that haven't really been taught or thought to ask that question, will be thinking like, no. We'll be thinking, actually, maybe I talk badly about time. Maybe I stuff time with as many things as possible. Maybe I blame time for me not having what I want right now, or for how I feel right now, or for what I'm not able to do and what I'm not able to achieve right now, right? There's not enough time. Maybe I also treat it with and fill it with stuff that not only doesn't really matter to me, but I don't even really enjoy. Like maybe I'm just like spending hours scrolling through things like social media, feeling worse and worse about myself, and just filling time with things that like I don't value, I don't care about, I don't honor. And so if that's you, don't worry. And also, by the way, when I say if that's you, it's probably not you 100% of the time. So we also want to acknowledge that. But if you are experiencing over 50% of your time like that, then that's okay. You've come to the right podcast episode. If you think about, actually, I do value my time. I value my time. And that's why what do you give to your time that shows that you value it? And it might be, I give my time space. A lot of my time hackers, this is one of the things that came up just this week. We spoke about the value of space. I give my time space. I give my time room to breathe. Maybe you set up meetings instead of them being back to back. You put a little break in between them. Maybe you switch your technology off at a certain time, or maybe you go for long walks just with your own brain, whatever it might be, or even short walks, by the way. There's no right length of time for walks. What are you like? How are you showing up to time? How are you valuing it? Are you like, even we could ask on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, I value my time the most. I see it as the most important thing that I can give to 1, which is like, I actually don't value my time at all. So where would you put yourself on that scale of 1 to 10? And no judgment, no shame, just curiosity right now. And why? Why did you give yourself? So if you gave yourself a 4, why did you give yourself a 4? And in answering that, don't just answer why it's not a 10, also answer why it's not a 1. So there's going to be probably some give and take in this. There's going to be some places where you find it easy to value and some places where you find it challenging to value. We just want to get really curious about that. Now, I'm going to tell you something. The one thing that I've heard, having coached thousands of people, is I'm really good at showing up for other people and external appointments, but I'm just not good at doing it for myself. And just some form of iteration of that. It might be like external appointments, meetings, social events. It might be when you say you're going to do something for someone, you do it. And yet when it comes to ourselves, we don't do it. The reason behind this, even if it's last minute, by the way, and like, close to a deadline, which I'm all for, by the way, I think, doing something ages in advance is great, and doing something last minute is also great. So getting it done is the difference, right? So if you are someone who is able to show up for other people and values their time and doesn't value your time, then the issue is not the time itself. The difference between those two things, their time and your time, is the people. if you value their time, you value them. And you could even think about maybe someone whose time you really value, maybe someone you admire, someone you respect, someone you love, someone you care about. Maybe you always would show up for them. Like, I want you to think about like maybe your favorite author, or even if like I was like, hey, I'm hosting, like I'm going to invite you for tea, come to my house. We're going to have like an afternoon together. Would you show up? Would you show up even if you not slept that well the night before? Would you show up even if you had laundry to do? Would you show up even if, you know, someone else offered you to go for coffee last minute? So you can think about it for me, you can think about it for like an author you admire, or another podcaster you admire, or someone that you like admire, someone that you would really like to meet. And I would love to meet all of you, by the way. So that's why I thought of that. Versus someone who you see as like a bother, annoying, you don't respect, you don't care for, you don't actually value their time. Like, how would you show up for them if they were like, can you meet me for a coffee? You'd probably put it off, delay responding, be totally fine canceling last minute, or even not showing up. So what I'm pointing out to you here, and some of you may have already got it, is it's not the time, it's the individual, right? It's the subject of that time. So the subject of being someone else, or the subject being ourselves. The subject also being many other people. But typically the reason why we are good and show up for other people on those calls in our calendar that are scheduled with other people, and we don't show up for ourselves, even though we know what we really want to do, we're like getting caught up in doing other things that don't really matter, is because we don't value ourselves enough. And that's not just you. I've created this podcast for a reason. That's because we've never been taught how to value ourselves. It's just not been prioritized. It's not prioritized in our education system. It's not prioritized, you know, in our social environments. It's just something that, like, maybe even listening to this podcast episode and seeing this title, you were like, what does this even mean? But yeah, we don't value ourselves. So we spoke about how much you value your time on a scale of 1 to 10. And now I want you to think about how much you value yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Again, coming at it with like no shame, no blame, no agenda, no criticism. Try and keep it as clean as possible. Just that, like, that curiosity mindset, that explorative brain. Just put on that explorer hat and dive into how much do you value yourself and why. Now, I want you to think about, so give yourself that number from 1 to 10 and really answer that question. And I do encourage even pausing and answering the questions out loud if you're in the car. Sometimes I do that when I'm listening to podcasts or audiobooks, or like wanting to, I mean, you guys know I've spoken about this before on the podcast, that I speak out loud a lot. Sorry, that's supply. And that I speak out loud a lot. So I fully encourage you to do the same thing. There's something about answering the question in the moment that makes it easier. It's easier now. Now is the least resistance than closing this podcast and coming and doing it later. So pause, answer the questions. If you are on social media, you want to DM me with your answers or your thoughts on this, I would love to hear from you. It's just at Feminist Time Coach, or on LinkedIn, Vicky Louise. I would love to hear from you. Okay, so the question is, that's where we are. How do we build value with ourselves? Right? Where you are right now actually doesn't matter for anything other than an awareness. We don't want to spend so long there. We don't want to spend so long wishing it was different. You know, thinking about why is it this, like, why is it this low? Like, I asked you why, but you want to be just as clean as possible with that and not go back to, you know, when I was 13 and this person said, like, you really don't want to be mining for more evidence to support your current number. We actually want to spend more time mining for evidence for why it's higher. So I want to start by first getting your brain on board with this, by motivating it, by asking you and your brain, what would be different if you valued yourself 10 out of 10? What would be different in how you used your time? What would be different in how you showed up for yourself? What would be different in the decisions that you make? What would be different in how you showed up when you experienced fear? What would be different in how you showed up when you exposed yourself to potential failure? Like, I really want you to get detailed there. What would be different? You can go back and pause and answer each of those specific questions, or you can just pause right now with really answering what would be different even in your day today. What would today look like if you valued yourself 10 out of 10? What would today look like if you valued your time 10 out of 10? I want you to know that this is exactly why things don't take time. And this is exactly why my time hackers are able to achieve more in like literally 3 days than they have in months often. Because I'm not giving them the routine, I'm not giving them the plan, I'm not giving them my calendar, which is mainly empty anyway. I am giving them the skill of valuing themselves. I'm giving them the skill of liking themselves. I'm giving them the skill of talking themselves up instead of talking themselves down. I'm giving them the skill of believing in themselves, right? Of backing themselves, of supporting themselves, of celebrating themselves, of cheerleading themselves. And all of that is like the root of every decision you make and every opportunity you take or create and everything that you do with your time, more so than, you know, a fancy app that pings purple when you haven't done what you said you're going to do in a day or whatever. I don't even know if that's a thing. So we've identified what would be different if I valued my time 10 out of 10. I'm going to tell you what changed for me when I started valuing my time and valuing myself. I stopped spending time on social media apps and following people and diving into their things when it felt bad. Now, I still spend time on social media. You guys hang out with me there, a lot of you see me there. I definitely still spend time there, but I'm not engaging in things that I don't want to engage in as like a numbing experience away from, you know, the goals that I want to achieve. As I valued my time and valued myself more, I prioritized rest. A lot of you guys know this. I wake up in the morning, send Ethan to nursery, and I often come back and rest first thing in the day. Rest isn't something that comes afterwards. I am not something that comes afterwards. I am something that comes first thing in the morning. Some mornings that's rest, some mornings that's sport, some mornings that's going out for a walk, some mornings that's scrolling social media in bed, all of the above, but doing what I want, what feels nourishing to me, instead of, you know, what I've been taught as a society is my biggest value to society. It's like intrinsic value, valuing myself internally instead of valuing my use and my purpose to the world. So those are just some of the changes that I experienced. So how do we build value? And there's lots of ways that we can do this. There's lots of tools in Time Hackers program where I speak about how to build belief on purpose and how to redirect our brain and how to build self-trust and likeness and make decisions through kindness for growth and all of that stuff. But today I want to leave you with something that you can implement to build value today, self-value. I want you to pause and I want you to think about connecting to a younger version of yourself. If you're not driving, even and walking on the side, if you can stop me, you can even close your eyes if you want. Put your hand on your heart and connect to that younger version of yourself. It could be like, I think about like 5-year-old Vicky, and I'm looking across from her and she is not paying bills. She's not creating podcasts. She's not cooking. She's not like doing any of the valuable, you guys can't see this if you're listening on the podcast, but inverted quotes, valuable things or things for others or things that we've been told creates value. Like she's basically just like a drain on her parents. As well as a source of love, I'm sure, but I connect with her. I ask myself, why is she valuable? Now that takes away my ability to say, oh, she's valuable because she gets things done. She's valuable because she's got a good to-do list that she's completed. She's valuable because she's made money. She's valuable because she's, I don't know, whatever else. So I want you to connect to a younger version of yourself. It doesn't matter the age. I pick 5. If you don't make it a big decision, if you want to, just pick 5 and connect to that version. Why are they valuable? Because they just are, right? And what happens when you remind yourself of that more and more? You start to value yourself more and more. Another thing, and this is inside the workbook in Time Hackers, one of the questions that we do is we look at someone else we admire, someone else we value. Why do we value them? And then we look for the ways that those things are true about us. So I'm actually going to give you 2 tips here. So the way those things are true about us. So for example, someone you admire could be an author. I think we spoke about that earlier. So you could admire an author, and what you admire about them could be they've created something, you know, that will last beyond them. Now, maybe you too have, maybe it's not a book, but maybe it's like a piece of art or a photograph or whatever it might be. Maybe you value someone and you admire that they travel and live all over, and actually you do travel too. Maybe you travel once a year, but do you pause to like value yourself for making that decision and taking that action? So it doesn't have to be huge. As with everything, small and simple is the way to go. We want to build value in ourselves. If we do not value ourselves, we will never value our time. So that's what I'm leaving you with today. Some thoughts about valuing your time and how to do it. And at the root of valuing your time is really valuing yourself. You cannot skip over that part. It might feel uncomfortable, it might feel awkward, and it might be completely new to anything that you've ever heard about how to, improve your time. And that's why it works. All right, my loves, that's it from me. If you haven't already downloaded the Stop Wasting Time guide, highly recommend you do it. Just go to vickylouise.com/guide. Actually, it used to be just a video, but we created a guide download as well. So that's exciting. Also, if you haven't, be sure to click subscribe. I just realized, I just saw a stat that 75% of people that listen to our podcast don't subscribe or follow it. And given that we've changed the name a few times, I just highly recommend that you click subscribe or follow to make sure if there's any changes, you're not missing out on them. All right, that's it from me, loves. Have a wonderful day. Bye.